Today on the channel, Flutter Basics, the very basics, getting Flutter installed on your PC. Stick around. Alright, so installing Flutter SDK on a system, regardless of what it is, starts at flutter.dev, and there is a Get Started button right here that you can click, and that will take you to the installation instructions, and they're going to vary with your system. So today we're going to do Windows. If you are in China, there are some prerequisites here that you'll want to hit. I'm not going to walk through those, so make sure you do those first, and then we can click on Windows. And just quickly glancing over the system requirements, you're going to need Windows 7 SP1 or later. You are going to need Windows PowerShell 5. You'll have that already if it's Windows 10. If you're on Windows 7, you want to take a look at installing that. And you'll also need Get for Windows. So if you don't have that yet, click on that. It will download. And you want to install Get with really just the basic settings. So I'll click on that. We'll download it. I'm on 64-bit, so I'll click that one. We'll run that. I already have it installed, but so I'm not going to walk through that. But basically, you want to just install all the defaults. You want to get that on your system. So I'm just going to say no at this point, but you would say yes and walk through installing Git. And with that, you have the prerequisites all set. So there's two ways to get the SDK. One is to download a zip file. The other is to use Git, like we just did, to get it from the repo. I'm going to do the zip version, so I'll click on that, and I will save that, and I'll pause the video while it does that. All right, that's finished downloading, so I'm going to go to my download folder, and here's where your first decision comes in. You need to decide where you want to keep this SDK, and I'm going to cut it from the download folder. And you don't want to put it in your documents because of permission issues. So you want to put it somewhere on the C drive. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new folder in the C drive called SDK. And I tend to have a lot of SDKs as a developer, and so I like to have one place to keep them that is obvious. So I'll paste that zip file in there. And then I am going to extract all. Yep, we'll extract right there. And that's going to take you a little while. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll come back when it's done. All right, and once that unzips, we have the Flutter SDK, which is just entitled Flutter. It is sitting inside of this horribly named folder right here. If you're more clever with zip, you can probably figure out a way to get rid of that. I always tend to get in my own head and end up putting the contents inside the folder I wanted it to be apparent for. So I am just going to cut the Flutter part, and I'm going to take it out here to the SDK, and then I'm just going to get rid of the folder that it created, which should be empty now. And I think I'll also get rid of the zip as well. I don't need it, so we'll save some space. All right, so this is your Flutter SDK. It's got everything you need in here to run Flutter, but we do need to let Windows know where this lies. So I will close that. And we've done this part, get the Flutter SDK, but we need to update our path so that Windows has a connection from a terminal to that folder to run the Flutter commands. And so we do that by going to our search bar, and we want to edit our environment variables. So I'm just going to type edit environment, and we should get something coming up here that is edit environment variables for your account. So I'll click on that. And we want to modify path up here under user variables. So we can highlight that and click edit. And what we want to do is add a new line with our Flutter SDK location. So we can go to new, and you can type the address in here, or you can hit browse and go to it, which is what I'm going to do. So it's in my PC, it's on my C drive. It's in my SDK folder. It's in Flutter, but I don't want to just do Flutter. I want to do Flutter bin. All right, we'll hit OK there. You want to make sure you hit OK at every step throughout this process as you go back out. That's going to save it. And now we should be able to open up a terminal. So I'll go to the search bar. I will type terminal. And I'm going to type Flutter Doctor. That is the diagnostic tool for Flutter. And here we go. I get some results. And this is not complete, so we get some errors here, but we're looking for this top one. We want to check mark that we have installed the Flutter SDK and that Windows knows where it is. So that part has been a success. If this is not working for you, go back and check your environmental variables. Make sure it's saved as you are coming out, and you might need to add it again if you forgot to hit one of those OKs. All right, so the piece we're missing here, we're missing the Android toolchain, we're missing the Android SDK. All of that comes bundled in Android Studio. So we want to install Android Studio, and we'll get all that stuff with it. So in our browser, we're here at Android Setup. And we go to install Android Studio, and there's a link right here that we can take to install Android Studio. And we're going to want to download it. Of course, I've read that agreement. We'll click download. And I will just run that. It shouldn't take too long. All right, that finished downloading. I'm getting this shield here. Do I want to allow it to make changes to my device? Why not? All right, and we can hit a lot of the defaults here. I'm fine with the location. If you want to change that, you can. And this will take a little while to install, so let me pause it. All right, that wasn't too bad. It was about 60 seconds, so then I can click Next. We can complete by hitting Finish. All right, that was actually much faster than Android Studio installs that I have done in the past. So that's good. This is new to me, so I'm not going to import any settings. So we'll just click OK there. I'll send user statistics to Google. I don't mind doing that. I think they know everything about me already anyway. All right, so we got the wizard here to set up our environment. We will say next. We can do standard setup. And you can go light mode, dark mode at this point. I'm going to choose light. And we'll click finish. And maybe this is the part I remember taking quite a bit here. So it's doing its thing. We don't have any more decisions to make at this point. So I'll pause it and we will let it install. All right, that wasn't too bad either. It was probably just over a minute. And I'm getting a warning here that I'm on a virtual device and it wasn't able to install Haxum for the emulator. But if you're on a physical machine, you shouldn't have any problem with that. I can click Finish. And now I have Android Studio. All right, and so I'm installing this in, gosh, when is it? It's so easy to lose track of time these days. April of 2020, and they have an issue here where we have to enable an obsolete package here. So this is in the instructions. If you don't see this under Android Studio, then it means that they have fixed it and you no longer need to worry about it. But if you're watching this shortly after I publish it and you still need to, then we need to go to SDK Manager. And we want to go to SDK Tools, and we want to uncheck this Hide Obsolete Packages down at the bottom. And they want you to tick this box here, Android SDK Tools Obsolete. All right, so we'll click OK there. And we will accept that. All right, with that clicked, that finish, we can click Finish and get out of there. All right, and that has given us the SDKs for Android, so we have everything we need. Now, to run this on an Android device, to run Flutter on Android, you can do a couple of things. One is you can simply have an Android device and hook it with a USB to your computer, and then you can run the applications right on your device. And if you can do that, that's probably the best way to do it. You don't have to deal with booting up an emulator and all that, and it takes up extra screen space when you do that with an emulator. So that's a great way to go. There are some steps here for getting your device into developer mode so that you can run it on yours. It's very easy. Read those instructions here. You can also set up an Android emulator. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. This may be where I run into issues because I'm on a virtual machine, but we'll see. So we can go to Configure and we can go to AVD Manager. And we can create a virtual device. And you can create any number of profiles to test this on different systems. I'm just going to create a Pixel. Let's just do Pixel 3. And you'll need to pick the SDK that you want to pair with that device. I already get a warning here that because I'm missing Haxum and I'm on a virtual machine that it won't work, but let's walk through the steps. I'm going to get, let's just take Pi. Yeah, I'm just going to download Pi and accept the license, click Next, and that is going to take a few minutes to download. All right, when that's done, we can click Finish. And I'll select Pi now that it's downloaded. There's some options that you can do here. I'm just going to, let me click on Advanced Settings. Yeah, we'll leave all that as is. And I'll click Finish. All right, and I suspect I won't be able to launch that because I'm on a virtual device. That's fine. But if you wanted to, you could certainly click play at that time. But more importantly, let's go down to the terminal and let's just verify that we have managed to get the Android SDK up and running. So we can type Flutter Doctor and see what kind of progress we've made. So we know we've got this part all set. All right, so we want this Android toolchain. We installed the SDK, but we still need to resolve some of the licensure. So we want to run this Flutter Doctor Android licenses. Oops, there we go, Android licenses. Review licenses, we'll say yes. And we read that word for word. We consult with our attorney. We accept that. We run that one by our attorney as well. And then we're all set. So let's type Flutter Doctor again. All right, we're making progress. So we've got the Flutter SDK installed. We've got the Android SDK installed. And so now we just need to finish the environment by creating, getting the tools that we need to create Flutter applications in our IDEs. And so we're ready for this next step at the bottom. We're not going to do web setup at this point. We're going to set up an editor. So you have this option of Android Studio or Visual Studio Code. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, but I'm going to do just a little bit in Android Studio just to make it so that I can open my project in Android Studio and have it be recognized because that comes in a little handy down the line. So if we go to this Android Studio menu, if we go to Configure and Plugins, we can look for Flutter, and we will get Flutter right there, and I'll go ahead and click and install. We'll accept that, say yes. All right. Then we can restart the IDE. So then I'm going to run Flutter Doctor again. Oh, well, let's wait till it opens. I'm going to run Flutter Doctor. And so the only thing we're missing now is a connected device, so you can fire up the emulator and satisfy that, or you can plug in your own device, having followed the instructions to put your device in developer mode. So lastly, I just want to enable Visual Studio Code. So first of all, we need to install Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go to VS Code. I'm going to download for Windows. I'm going to run it. We'll accept the agreement. We're doing a lot of that today. We'll let it install it in the default location or the location of your choice. Click install, and this one goes pretty quick. There is a lot in Visual Studio Code, but it doesn't take a whole lot to install. So while that boots up for the first time, I'm going to go back to the Flutter instructions and into the tab on Visual Studio Code. So we get over there. Started Visual Studio Code, or we're doing that now. Slide this over, maybe. All right, we want to invoke view, so we go to view command palette. Want to type install, and we want to select extensions, install extensions, so right there. So we'll type Flutter, and the very top one is the official Flutter package. We will install that. All right, and then to validate, we're going to go to View, Command Palette, and we should now have Flutter extensions. We can do Flutter, Flutter Run Doctor. We need to locate the SDK, and so we know where that is. That's on our C drive, SDK. And I think they're actually looking for the Flutter folder here, not the bin. So let's set the Flutter SDK. Could not find Flutter SDK. Please ensure that Flutter is installed, and in your path you may need to restart. Let's try that. So we'll reopen Visual Studio Code. We'll go to View, we'll go to Command Palette, we'll go to Flutter Run Flutter Doctor. And I can see it's already located our SDK. We're past that step. All right, we got no scary messages back. That means we have successfully installed the Flutter SDK, the Android SDK. We have the tooling in place for Visual Studio Code. We also put the tooling in place for Android Studio, so you can use either one of those IDEs to develop. But nevertheless, you are ready to develop Flutter applications on your Windows machine at this point. So hopefully this was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, stick around. We're going to have more of these series on Flutter Basics coming up soon.